Hey, Daddy, this is the man of the champions, Bill Fonzie Alfonso, giving a shout out to something else. Something else, Daddy.
This is Nickel Matata, Great Warrior Wolf, and you are listening to Something Else.
I'm Tony Cini, and you're listening to Something Else.
Hey everybody, it's Rich Palladino, the voice of New England, and you are listening to Something Else with Aria.
And welcome to episode number 092 of Something Else. Feast your ear holes on this week's episode as we take a look at both Mid-South Wrestling and World Class Championship Wrestling from 41 years and 1 day ago this week, May 7th, 1983. My name is Aria, and welcome to the show. So, got to get a few things off my chest here. And if you're here for the wrestling content, fast forward about 5 minutes. I know that, there's some new people who might be checking out the show this week. 5 minutes. Just fast forward. So I wanted, I want to take the high road, but I really can't. So we're all adults. And we all make mistakes. We all do things that we regret. Even if it's not necessarily a mistake, we all do things that we regret. And most of us, being adults, you grow up, you mature, you're like, okay, I did something stupid. I cop to that. Move on with our lives. Shit happens. Unfortunately, I wouldn't be telling the story today if that was always the case with the people in my life. So, one member of my friend circle is no longer in that circle. And if he's listening to this right now, don't worry, I'm, not going to go into terrible detail here. But, at the end of the day, him and I were hanging out a few months ago with a few other friends, and he did something stupid. He did something that he regrets. Nothing illegal, just something that he regrets doing. Now, I should tell you that I had no involvement in, the specific thing that he was doing that he regretted. However, a few weeks later, this person and I were on the phone. We were talking about this moment, and he went off on me. And he blamed me because I physically did not get up and stop him from doing what he was doing. Now, first of all, fuck you. But secondly, you're a grown-ass adult. I get, calling an 18-year-old a grown-ass adult, yeah, but no, this grown-ass adult was a bit older than 18. A lot closer to 30 than he is to 20. You're a grown-ass adult. You make your own decisions, right, wrong, indifferent, whatever, you own up to them. And if you regret it, well, you learn, you move on. This person did something he regrets. And instead of owning up to it, taking responsibility, he blamed me. And he told me that when he drinks, it's my responsibility to keep him from doing something stupid. I'm like, well, first of all, no, the fuck it's not. But secondly, it's like, yeah, he'd been drinking, but drinking and drunk are two different things. And especially at that point, it had been at least an hour, hour and a half since he drank anything. So it's like, well, he's not sober. It's like the clouds are lifting. Like even if you're drunkest, you know what the fuck you're doing at this point. And he did something he regrets, and we had it out back in January about it. And then life moved on. Our friendship wasn't the same, but we just moved on. So last week, him and I were hanging out with some other friends, and he just completely ignored me. Said 10 words to me the whole night. And even that was me having to pull teeth to get those 10 words out of him. And at this point now, I just like, you know what, fuck this, you know? So I texted him later that night, and I was like, you know what? Either tell me to fuck off or block me if you don't actually want to be friends with me anymore. And after I went to sleep, he messaged back and nicely told me to fuck off. So when I woke up Monday morning, I responded back, essentially that. Like, don't, like, I hope the next time you do something that you regret, you take ownership and don't just blame the next person nearest to you. Honestly, I wasn't even the next person nearest to him. It was just, the next person after that. But still. So, a giant fuck you to some people out there. But, yeah, now that that's out of the way, let's talk about some wrestling. And we're going back into the Wayback Machine. What the hell is it here? Uh, May 7, 1983. Now, just to throw this out ahead of time, the world class version, I could not get it on YouTube. And as we've noted in previous weeks, Peacock does not like me on my computer, apparently, especially when I'm trying to play stuff back, during a podcast. So there's no world class audio this week. You do have some Mid South audio, so yay for that. And that's it. And we'll finish things up with our normal world class review, but it'll be a lot quicker since I won't be pausing every 3 minutes. But anyway, let's start with Mid South Wrestling, May 7th, 1983, from the Irish McNeil Boys Club in Shreveport, Louisiana. Well, let's go to the intro here with Bill Watts and Boyd Pierce.
Welcome to this week's edition of Mid-South Wrestling Television. I'm your host, Boyd Pierce. We have a lot of exciting action. You'll see a special challenge match. The Black Ninja, Kendo Nagasaki, in the ring against Hacksaw Jim Duggan. Also, a wild battle between Mr. Wrestling 2 and Big Powerhouse King Kong Bundy. Tag team action sees Hacksaw Butch Reed join forces with Tiger Conway Jr. It all spells excitement, and the man to tell you about it, Cowboy Bill Watts.
Well, that's right. Thank you, Boyd. And, just recently in Houston, Texas, Chavo Guerrero, a tremendous athlete, was set up by the Rat Pack, by Ted DiBiase and Mr. Olympia. Gran Marcus, a superstar from Mexico that was scheduled in Houston to wrestle Chavo Guerrero, did not show up. And Olympia and DiBiase challenged him. The people picked DiBiase. And in the ensuing situation, DiBiase and Mr. Olympia both really did a number on Chavo Guerrero. It came about later that El Gran Marcus was never booked there, that DiBiase had somebody with a Mexican accent call promoter Paul Bosch and get El Gran Marcus on the card. So DiBiase said, we got even with you for showing up the Rat Pack on TV. But we do have a tape of Chavo Guerrero in a match right before his injury in the Superdome. We'll see later. But first of all, last week was excitement galore here. I'm telling you, anytime you tune into Mid-South Wrestling, you just got to hold on your seat. You never know what's going to happen. But Hacksaw Jim Duggan made a statement about DiBiase and Skandar Akbar last week and then lived up to it. Let's again listen to Hacksaw Jim Duggan's statement.
Alrighty, so we don't need to listen to that because we listened to it last week. But, so Jim Duggan, he is a babyface. He is the babyface we all know and, to some degree love over the next couple decades until he runs into Vince Russo. But Duggan's a babyface, and he's going to be taking on the Black Ninja, Kendo Nagasaki, this week. Plus, Mr. Wrestling 2 is going to be the first real challenger to King Kong Bundy. Bundy's been doing nothing but these enhancement matches where he wins with a 5 count. Well, now he's got to wrestle a star. And can he beat this man? Can he keep him down for a 5 count? We'll find out. Plus, Butch Reed and Tiger Conway Jr. in exciting tag team action. And then we start talking about a recent occurrence in Houston with Chavo Guerrero. So apparently, Gran Marcus was scheduled to wrestle Chavo Guerrero, but he no-showed. And it turned out the reason why he no-showed is because he was never actually booked. And somebody called with a fake Mexican accent saying that they were Gran Marcus and wanting to be booked. And Paul Bosch took their word for it. And so it was an elaborate scheme that we're either talking about this week or next week. I think it's next week. Let me quickly run down this week's stuff. Yeah, it's next week. So we'll get into all of it next week, but basically, is it? Oh, yeah, it is. I apologize. I'm just, all over the place here. Yeah. So it's a whole big convoluted thing to lead to a Chavo Guerrero beatdown. Spoiler alert. So they recapped everything with Duggan from last week. They showed Duggan's promo where they said him and DiBiase are going to go their own ways. They then showed the angle where Duggan attacked Kendo and Akbar, tearing Akbar's clothes off and getting Kendo's foot stuck in the ropes. Then they show Akbar's show closing promo with DiBiase saying that as long as Duggan doesn't interfere in his business, then he won't fight Duggan. Boyd then calls Grizzly Smith an opportunist. Now, to be honest, he probably meant that as a matchmaker and not, what the rest of us are probably thinking of nowadays. But you can read into it however you want. Grizzly Smith is an opportunist. So let's go to the ring for Hacksaw Duggan versus Kendo Nagasaki with General Skandor Akbar. Duggan was yelling at Akbar throughout the introductions and attacked Nagasaki at the bar. Oh, Jesus Christ. Attacked Nagasaki at the bell. Not at the bar. They were not at the bar. They were in the ring here. He attacked Nagasaki at the bell, much to the delight of the fans. DiBiase then immediately runs out, giving further proof to the fact that he is a liar because he loads his glove and knocks Duggan the fuck out. DiBiase left outside of the ring unconscious, and Duggan was left outside there unconscious, and the heels left together. So just to go over that again, Duggan and Nagasaki were in the ring. Duggan was winning on him. DiBiase ran out and knocked him out with a pair of brass knuckles. And Duggan was left unconscious outside the ring. And I will say, this is the best Nagasaki match we've ever seen. Back from commercial, Bill Watts is going to recap what we've just seen, and then he's going to pitch it to a match from the Superdome. Yes, more Superdome stuff.
Well, Boyd Pierce, while we get everything back to order here, that's Tornit. DiBiase's Tornit. He may as well have been the one out there because he's certainly with Akbar 100% against Hacksaw Jim Duggan, and I guarantee you sparks are going to fly. And as we talked earlier about Chavo Guerrero, we hope that he gets better. He really sustained a beating at the hands of DiBiase and Mr. Olympia in Houston, Texas. We hope next week to have that film clip. But first, let's watch Chavo Guerrero on the 16th of April in the Superdome as he showed just what makes him a great superstar, that kind of heart and courage as he wrestled Wild Bill Irwin. Let's watch that bout now.
All right, so this match, Chavo Guerrero and Bill Irwin, joined in progress from the Superdome. And, it's one of those things that, like, nowadays, you're like, oh, yeah, of course we're going to have big matches. It's not something, we saw all the time, especially like this. Like, this was a major show, and this was a match on the show. Sure, it wasn't a main event, but we already saw those. So we're going to watch some undercard stuff now. The fans really got into Chavo's comeback. And, I mean, calling it a comeback is generous since they didn't exactly show Irwin getting in any offense. But Chavo breaks out a suicide dive, which pops the crowd. Irwin hits a move that in 2024 would be called a brogue kick, but Chavo got the pin with a bridging German suplex. An exciting match, or at least what we saw was pretty exciting. And this was the second match on the card, but, it was the first real match, because the first match was, the expiration of time match in the opener between Kelly Kiniski and Art Cruz. Let's go to King Kong Bundy, who's going to cut a promo about his match with Mr. Wrestling 2.
In the background, you hear the crowd hollering 2, 2, 2 as he goes to the ring. But first, let's hear King Kong Bundy's remarks about the living legend, Mr. Wrestling 2, that he made just prior to this taping session. King Kong Bundy.
When I came to Mid-South Wrestling, I told these promoters I came here to wrestle top-flight competition. Well, finally, I've got what I wanted, because after last week, when I showed the Atlantic City Avalanche, these promoters know they can no longer deny King Kong Bundy. And now I've got Mr. Wrestling 2, the living legend of professional wrestling. Well, let me tell you something, 2. You've never wrestled anything. You've never been in the ring with anything like King Kong Bundy. And as for your big knee, look at this, 2. I've got a 26-inch neck. And that can absorb plenty of shock and take plenty of punishment, and no knee is going to bother me. You're going down, 2. You're going down for the 5 count. The Avalanche is going to put you down. I'll put you down for 5. I'll put you down for 10. I may put you down long enough for them to plant daisies. King Kong Bundy, the dominant force in professional wrestling.
This event is for...
Okay. So, I mean, it's your standard operating procedure heel promo here. You know, he says he's going to keep Mr. Wrestling 2 down for a 3 count, a 5 count, and possibly long enough for them to plant daisies. And, you know, hopefully not, but, you know, you never know with this kind of stuff here. But, so, yeah. So then, where the hell is I? There we go. So I do want to note, though, it's always funny because Bundy, you know, in the WWF, I think, you know, every promo he ever did, he was in his gear, you know, his 2-strap singlet. In Mid-South, he wears a lot of suits when doing these promos. And it's always funny to see King Kong Bundy wearing a leisure suit. But here he was wearing it here. And I can't even explain why it's funny because, like, okay, well, Andre's never in a suit. You've seen Andre in real clothes. It doesn't look that weird. But King Kong Bundy in real clothes, it looks weird. So then we get the match, King Kong Bundy versus Mr. Wrestling 2. During the match, Watts tells a story about how Mr. Olympia is going around saying the fans aren't really behind Mr. Wrestling 2 because if they were, they'd be chanting he was number 1 instead of number 2. All right, I guess, you know, you got to do something to advance the storyline some weeks, even though, you know, there's not a whole lot to it here, but whatever. So 2 gets on a front face lock. And now we've all watched a billion wrestling matches. We've seen 2 billion front face locks. You know what they look like. You know that sometimes it's reaching a little bit to see, you know, some people, especially a smaller guy, put a larger guy in a front face lock, or really any kind of hold that kind of looks stupid sometimes. But Mr. Wrestling 2, you know, is fierce enough and tough enough that I had no reason to not believe that he could be hurting Bundy with this front face lock. 2 finally hit the knee, but 1 wasn't enough. 2 wasn't enough, but 3 of them finally takes Bundy off his feet. However, Bundy was back to his feet, and when 2 hit another knee, Bundy crashes into referee Alfred Neely. Outruns Mr. Olympia, who had a foreign object on his boots, and knocked 2 out with an enziguri before running away. Bundy hoisted 2 up and hit the Atlantic City Avalanche, where he nearly dropped 2, by the way, and Alfred Neely woke up, and Bundy got not just the pin, he got the 5-count pinfall. Which legitimately, and again, I've watched a lot of wrestling in my life. I think that's the first time I've ever seen Bundy do the 5 count on a name wrestler. And it's funny because, like, the match itself was pretty good. And I can't say it's impossible to have a bad match here on Mid-South, but I mean, that's not the case either. They had a pretty fun little match. It didn't go long enough to fall apart. Like, you weren't watching a 15-minute, you know, Gotch Hackenschmidt classic here. You're watching a fucking 4-minute, you know, quick spurt of a brawl here, and it was fun and it was good. Ted DiBiase with General Skandor Akbar versus Tim Horner. Horner is still being punished for making Bullet Bob take the Smoky Mountain title from a sick child that Corny sent him back in time to do jobs on Mid-South TV. It makes as much sense as anything else, right? The Boyd notes that during the Duggan match, Akbar had dropped behind and didn't get in the ring like he normally does, but did here now that Duggan wasn't here. Horner did look good here, but as we always say, as long as you don't give him a microphone, he's fucking great. DiBiase gave Horner a lot here. And I mean, they went longer than 3 minutes. So if you're going to do, even an enhancement match, if you're going, 5-6 minutes, you have to do something to make the match exciting. And, not everybody is Dirty White Boy just doing a 6-minute squash match where the other guy gets nothing in. However, I would say, though, that DiBiase may have been too generous, considering their respective positions on the card, where DiBiase is, one of the top heels, if not the top heel, and Tim Horner is, underneath, enhancement talent babyface. However, like, if you haven't noticed, like, that's also been the thing with Mid-South, too. It's like, Bob Roop was famous for this last year when he was the North American champion. He'd do a 5-minute match and get his ass kicked for 4 minutes, 50 seconds, hit one move and win. And it's like, you argue whether or not you're really making this other guy, you're really looking strong here, yourself, because, like, you can't just put another guy over, repeatedly, just to beat him at the end, because at some point it's like, okay, this is a little contrived. You've done all this, but, we'll see where this goes from here, I guess. So the crowd was chanting for both Duggan and JYD at different points, and I should note that the crowd was chanting louder for Duggan. They said that next week we'll see the Von Erichs versus the Freebirds. I feel like I've seen that before, and we'll see it again kind of later today. DiBiase had the win with a power slam, but he picked Horner up at 2. Finally, Duggan ran in with a 2x4 and broke it on DiBiase's back for a disqualification. The crowd lost their shit. Now, I'm not saying that this wasn't a setup here. Because, by the way, Duggan, when I say broke it on DiBiase's back, he broke it on DiBiase's back. However, if you go back and watch it, Duggan is literally holding the board right where it splits over DiBiase's back. So we'll give him the benefit of the doubt for a second here. But I'm actually pretty sure that this is the debut of Jim Duggan with the 2x4. So little by little, we're getting all little things that make Jim Duggan the Jim Duggan we all remember and love. So after the match with DiBiase laid on the ground, we need a fiery babyface promo by our new top babyface, Jim Duggan. Let's go to the announce desk for that.
You've knocked DiBiase's lights out. He's out. You better believe he's out. You better believe he's out. And you, if anybody, Bill Watts, should understand, sometimes a man needs to walk tall. A man needs to walk tall, and Hacksaw Duggan's that man. DiBiase, part of Akbar, he lied to me, man-to-man, a friend. Akbar, I'm a proud American, Bill Watts. I'm a proud man of a proud family. A lot of people may not agree with the way I live or my lifestyle, but I can do it in America, and God bless America, and I'll fight for what's right. And what's right is the way I live and the way I want to live. Not DiBiase, not that backstabbing Akbar. Well, he just said it, Boyd Pierce. Hacksaw Duggan said he was going to walk tall. And listen to the crowd, they love it, and Akbar's backing off.
Akbar is not just backing off. Akbar is openly worried because, DiBiase is flat out. And they got 2 referees and Akbar, and they can't wake him up, and they're literally dragging him out of the ring at this point. So we have a new top babyface here. He says sometimes a man has to walk tall, and that's what he's going to do. He's a proud man, and he's going to fight for his right to live the way he wants to live. And, you may not agree with, the way he chooses to live, but it is. So we have a new top babyface. We have a new top feud. And it's interesting to see where this all goes from here. Because, again, what does Junkyard Dog do? Junkyard Dog is the North American champion. And, yeah, fine, he's kind of feuding with Mr. Olympia, but Mr. Olympia's primary feud is Mr. Wrestling 2. He never really had that giant final blow-off match with DiBiase, but DiBiase's not feuding with Duggan. And so Dog is a little bit of in limbo here, which is kind of amazing when you think about it, because, Dog is the top, the theoretical top babyface in this company. So we're going to have to sit back, take a deep seat, and wait to see what happens from here. But going to the next match, tag team action, Butch Reed and Tiger Conway Jr. versus Ron Sheetham and Don Clark. Reeser fucked up here, and it's what happens when you have someone named Ron and somebody named Don in the same match, as Reeser called them Don Cheatham, and was in the middle of saying Ron Clark when he had to stop himself. Ultimately, does it really matter? I could have told you their names backwards, and would any of y'all known that I got that wrong? So Clark is a big man, flabby, close to 300 pounds, and Conway slammed him repeatedly, which was, impressive. And I get, I'm sure he went up for Conway, but still, Conway, is small by the standards of 1983, but, he had no problem throwing around this big, large man. Four-way breaks out in this enhancement match, and Reed pinned Clark after a diving shoulder block. Unfortunately for Conway, there was a secret stipulation to this match where the member of the winning team who did not score the fall is forced to leave Mid-South for 4 years. Oh, damn. Poor Tiger. It was good seeing you, Tiger. You were here for a month. We'll see you in 4 years. I think he doesn't come back till after the UWF gets sold to Crockett. So that's the last time Bill Watts is going to write that boy a check. Write that man a check. All right, so Tony Zane versus Ken Woodby to finish up here with our expiration of time match. Woodby did not have Arman Hussein in his corner like he did over on World Class last week. Of course, having Arman in his corner the last 2 weeks in World Class didn't do much good here either. At this point, and this does come back next week, but Boyd just randomly goes off on a rant about fans throwing stuff at the ring. And I note here that I bet you $10 Boyd got hit with some trash at a recent show. And nobody was actually paying attention to this fucking match, including the announcers. And we were all shocked when Tony Zane won. Tony Zane won with an elbow drop. They did a finish in the expiration of time match. I was so surprised that he won, I had to rewind to see how he did it. But Tony Zane wins. And we'll see if that does anything for him. The answer is no. But we're going to see if it does. And so that's it for Mid-South. Like I said, we have a new top babyface. The fans love him. The fans are embracing him. And I can't wait to see what happens next. And thankfully, again, Kendo Nagasaki is on his way out the door. So I don't have to sit here and talk about him much longer either. And now let's go state over, and we skip from Shreveport to Dallas as we go to World Class Championship Wrestling from May 7th, 1983, from the Sportatorium in Dallas, Texas. Bill Mercer opens up by telling us we're going to have an array of international wrestlers, and the main event today, the Freebirds in a 6-man tag against Kerry Von Erich, Chavo Guerrero, and Iceman Parsons in a penalty box match. Now, what is a penalty box match? Don't worry, they explain it later. So we go to the ring for our opener. It is a match that's actually been built up since we started watching this show 2 months ago. It is Tola Yatsu with Arman Hussein versus Kamala with Friday and General Skandor Akbar in his corner. Now, you might remember last week on Mid-South when Akbar wanted DiBiase to go after Duggan. He said that Kamala had an important commitment in Dallas this week. This is the important commitment he had in Dallas this week. We got a payoff. And so it's amazing how much time Kamala spends painting his face and stomach for what are generally very short matches. I think we had that 6-minute match with Iron Mike Sharp a few months ago. That was like the longest Kamala match I'd ever seen in my life. But it's amazing. And I guess Warrior did his intricate designs for short matches, but at least Warrior had those 3 long matches, the Hogan match and the 2 Savage matches. It's like, okay, that's a good reason to intricately paint your face. But, Kamala doesn't have those. Kamala has 5-minute matches at best. This was a big meaty men match. Unfortunately, Yatsu wasn't selfish, and Kamala wouldn't bump. So Yatsu got taken down repeatedly by chops. He would spring up, he would fire up and hit some of his own blows, but Kamala wouldn't take a bump for it. And it's like, oh, I gotta tell you, I know this is 1983, but man, this could have been a better match. But this was more about getting Kamala over, not Yatsu. And, that's where we are here. Arman Hussein distracted Kamala repeatedly by blowing the whistle. And Kamala would get out of the ring and, because he was distracted by this whistle, he was mesmerized by the whistle of Arman Hussein, and Friday had to literally drag him back to the ring. At one point, they walked by Mark Lawrence, and I was hoping that he would do to Lawrence what he did to Mercer last month by just randomly attacking him, but sadly, he didn't. Hussein gets in the ring, and Kamala grabbed the whistle, and Hussein got in the ring. Kamala, grabbed his whistle and then beat the shit out of Arman Hussein. Kamala then gave Arman Hussein multiple splashes for the disqualification. You can't just get splashed by one of the wrestlers. Yatsu comes back in and has the stick, but that was a bad idea because Kamala got it from him and waylaid everyone not named Skandor Akbar, and I mean everyone. Turns out both men were disqualified. That just goes to show you, don't let your manager get splashed and don't splash managers. So from here we go to Akbar's lovely estate for an interview. And I'm not that sad that we don't have audio because I'm not going to play it. But, this was just Akbar in his palatial estate with the Mongol standing behind him wearing a giant fur pelt. Allegedly, Akbar was talking to Bill Mercer. However, we never hear Mercer and we never see Mercer. And Akbar is just staring at the camera while he's talking. So I'll bet you $5 that Bill Mercer was nowhere near General Skandor Akbar during this promo. Anyway, he states he still wants to take out Arman Hussein's people and then challenge the Von Erichs, saying that they're afraid of the Mongol, they're afraid of Kamala, and then he starts complaining about hair. And he says he knows someone who has a truly awful hairstyle, and him and the Mongol are going to take care of that person. And I'm like, good God, please don't fucking let it be Kendo Nagasaki. We're just getting rid of him in Mid-South. And I guess it would make sense that this would be the next stop for him. But please don't fucking do that. He doesn't mention who it is, but who else has a notoriously shitty haircut? But then we get the Mongol in the ring with General Skandor Akbar versus, and this is how Mark Lawrence introduced him as, in his red tights, Mike Reed. So I'm thinking that his Mike Reed's nickname is In His Red Tights. All right. So Mercer brings up Mongol's pending feud with Chris Adams. And I guess maybe that's the person with the shitty haircut that Akbar's going after. But Adams doesn't have a shitty haircut. He has a short buzz cut, but I mean, you're not going to change that, a whole lot. Mongol had the pin after a spinning neckbreaker, but pulled the man up at the count of 3 because he wanted the match to continue. Anyway, Mongol kept doing moves, thinking he was a wrestler in 2023 as opposed to 1983, and he wins with a power slam. Now, at this point, that was the last undercard match that we have, and there's still 30 minutes left on the show. And the only thing scheduled left is the main event. So this might be one of those take a deep seat moments here. But before we get to the main event, we have a pre-taped promo where Bill Mercer interviews David Manning, who is in a penalty box before the show, and to ask him what the hardest move to break is. And Manning says the hardest move to break is when you're in the penalty box, which is just stupid, but okay, whatever. And then they explain the rules of the penalty box match. Essentially, if you break the rules, you're going to the penalty box, and it increases in time every time you go. The first time your team breaks the rules, it's 1 minute. Second time, it's 2 minutes. Third time, it's 3 minutes, etc., etc. However, Manning does say that if 2 members of a team are already in the box, that they'll be lenient because otherwise you'll have a forfeit. Mercer didn't want to let Manning out of the box at the end of the promo, and to be honest, I didn't blame him. Now, what they don't note either, because they had 2 penalty boxes, one for each team, but these fucking things were small. You could barely get 2 people in them. You were not getting 3 people in these fucking penalty boxes. So that made at least that made sense. But then we go to our main event. It is the penalty box match. The Freebirds versus Kerry Von Erich, Iceman King Parsons, and Chavo Guerrero. They announced that in about 60 days, that's how they referred to it as, in about 60 days, there will be a rematch between Ric Flair and Kevin Von Erich for the world title at the greatest international Star Wars ever. So are they going to Saudi Arabia? No, they're not. So essentially, there's no disqualifications in this match. So that doesn't really play into anything here. But essentially, there are no disqualifications because if you do break the rules, you just go to the box. So why wouldn't you just get a couple chairs and have 2 of the members of your team beat the fuck out of the other 3? Sure, they'd go to the box, but then the 3rd team member could just moonwalk in and pin somebody. So Chavo starts with Hayes and gets the better of the Freebird leader, sending him over the top rope with a drop kick. The Birds tried to argue that should send Chavo to the box since, over the top rope is a disqualification, but they ineffectively argued, and the match just continued. Chavo and Gordy, I thought, worked really well together. They did a spot where Gordy kept throwing him into the ropes and Chavo would run off with a shoulder block. And the first 2 or 3 times, Chavo would bump. But then he did it again and it's like, ooh, neither bumped. He does it again and Gordy starts to stumble. And he does it again and finally Gordy goes down to the, delight of this Texas crowd. Now, I know that sounds preposterous because Chavo Guerrero is a small man and Terry Gordy is not a small man, but trust me, it was okay. It looked good. It made sense. So the Freebirds are beating on Kerry while the referee was giving Hayes the what's what. Gordy nailed Kerry from the apron, which was caught, so he got put in the box. Then Hayes was caught doing the same thing while Roberts was in the ring, so he got put in as well. So now the babyfaces have a 3-on-1 advantage. Roberts, the valiant underdog heel in peril, kicking out of one big move after another until Gordy got out. By the way, Roberts, just before Gordy got out, got the advantage while down 3-1. Is Russo booking this shit? Gordy hit Parsons' head in the corner, but Parsons is an African-American man in the 1980s, so he didn't hurt him. And sorry, I'm not being racist. That's literally pro wrestling in the 1980s. If you're not white, you have a hard head that can't be hurt by simple things like being run into the turnbuckle. So, by the way, Parsons tagged out to Chavo. For some reason that no one knew, Kerry got put in the penalty box. It made absolutely no sense. Then Parsons ran into the ring, which put him in the penalty box, and then biased David Manning randomly put Buddy Roberts in, so it's now 2-on-1 in the ring. Chavo at one point kicks out at a 4 count as Kerry runs back to the corner. Parsons gets out just in time to get sent right back in. Kerry got beat on forever, but finally field goal kicked Buddy Roberts and made the hot tag. A wild brawl breaks out that sends half the people back to the penalty box. The finish sees Hayes get out of the cage, slam the door into David Manning's head as he's leaving the cage, but before he could actually do something, in the ring, Parsons rolled Gordy up for the win. Chavo, by the way, he was still in the cage, so it was now 3-on-2, and the Freebirds got their heat back. The Freebirds lose, but they got their heat back immediately because they beat the shit out of Kerry and Parsons. They dropped Kerry with a spike pile driver, and finally Chavo got out and ran the heels off with a chair. A fun 6-man tag team main event. Well, let's be honest, it could have been worked a lot better, but, I'm sure we'll see more penalty box matches in the future, and like with all types of matches, once you learn how to work them, it gets easier to have a good match. Like triple threat matches. Like nowadays, they're second nature. Everyone knows how to do a triple threat match. But you watch the early triple threat matches, in like 95, 96, 97. It's like they were so painfully awkward at times. And yeah, so in a lot of ways, that's what this was. It was sometimes painfully awkward match. Could have been done better. Could have been better in execution. It wasn't, but it was still a fun match to watch. So Mercer says to end the show that next week we're going to meet Chris Adams. We're going to have Jose Lothario versus Kamala and Iceman Parsons versus Buddy Roberts. That sounds awful. And if Adams' promo is as bad as it was a few weeks ago, I may be coming down with an awful illness that only lets me watch Mid-South next week. But I guess we'll see. We'll see how it goes. But that's going to do it here for something else. You know, we had some fun. We watched some old school wrestling. We're going to have some more old school wrestling next week and forever. I want to thank everybody for listening. Hope you all enjoyed the show. Forgive me for my ranting at the beginning. And, we'll talk to you again in 7 days.